While I was playing that delightful little melody, I actually went into Facebook or Hotmail or whatever it was, or I beat the system. I found a way around it without getting the password. So there, I feel much better now. So you can actually, if you're tapping into Mirador Television or Facebook or whatever, you may well see us playing around with the radio this morning. Only for another 15 minutes. It's 7:44. What's happening in the weather this morning? Well, it's a lovely, lovely day. Our temperature is going to creep up to 17 today, and it started from a base of 8. When I came in from New Haven this morning, which was about, I caught the 5:30 train, so I was out in the fresh air at 5:15, and I must say that it was not unpleasant. So we started off well. It's going to sunshine. The breeze is going to be gentle, it says, which is great. So perhaps there'll be an opportunity to have a pint at lunchtime without having to shiver and grasp whatever clothes you've got to put on. So we're in good shape as far as the weather is concerned, and no rain. There shouldn't be anyway. But it is going to cloud over this afternoon, but it's not going to pour. It's not going to be any spatters. You can go out without the brolly. So that's the situation there. What is all the news this morning is about the Dominic Cummings' evidence to a parliamentary select committee about how the pandemic had been handled by Number 10. And boy, he's left nothing to the imagination. You have, for all the things that he said, you just have to read it because it's a charge after charge after charge. But basically, what he's really saying is they're all useless and shouldn't be in charge. Well, I've been saying that about governance, both local and national, for quite some time. So I guess I'm in with Dominic, all right. But I don't really agree with what his motive is. According to most of the papers, it's revenge. And the reporters who were there could actually see it in the man's demeanour. Revenge is very sweet sometimes. Yes, it is, well, particularly when you're right. But it also can be very sour in the sense that afterwards, what have you got? The taste of sawdust in your mouth. So you've vented your spleen and you've said to everybody, look, what a bunch of dickheads these people are. Well, I sit somewhere in between. I don't think it's vengeance, but I do think that if we are aware of things that need putting right or investigating or looking at, or at least being raised for a matter of discussion and debate, then I think that we are duty bound, and particularly if we've got a voice, as indeed I have, and we have this television station, and journalists and broadcasters and media have around the country and around the world. If we've got the means to say this needs to be looked at, then I think we should. It's all very well to say, maybe that's very hurtful, and will it do any good? Well, yes, it will do some good, because one or two things will come out of it. We'll have a good debate in which either the people that we've accused of being useless will demonstrate that they aren't useless and demonstrate the good things that they're doing, or we will have shown that we are being led by useless people, and that's when reform is called for. That's when elections should be called, or people should be dumped. And you say, you don't really mean throw senior people out of work. Well, yes, I do. Because what is good for the rich has got to be good for the poor, or vice versa. You can get fired quite easily in a circumstance in this country, in work. It doesn't take much, and it shouldn't take much at the top. And that's the trouble, quite often, is along with a lot of other privileges in the elite. And I hate to be talking that way. I'd love to be part of the elite. Don't misunderstand. I'd love to have all these things in my back pocket, all these privileges. But the fact is that if you're going to have those privileges, you've got to earn them, the same as anything else. And a lot of people are just taking them for granted, and they use them accordingly. Oh dear. Well, if I have to escape this morning in my life. I've got my Learjet waiting on the runway at Lewis Airport, just so that I can go and dash and dive in and get out of the clutches of angry people shouting and yelling at me. Why not? Why not indeed? 7:48. Now, one of the things that I hopefully can talk about a little bit on telly this morning is that we really got a very good story right in our midst at Arundel Castle, where some thieves stole some relics, amongst them some beads that were worn by Mary Queen of Scots when she went to her death. And we're talking about the 1500s, of course, although the Arundel Castle, one of the best preserves in the country, and it's a delight to go around. Every part of it it goes back to the late 1000s. It was one of the very first, along with Lewis, to be built by the Conqueror and by his acolytes. And the Duke of Norfolk has looked after that castle. It's actually got a first-class cricket pitch in on its grounds, a pitch on which professional cricketers will play without fear of having their heads knocked off because the ball will skew off at a stupid angle which they're not expecting. So that's one of the odd things. But also, the Battle of Lewis, take it back. The Battle of Lewis was something different. That was between Henry III and the barons, and that was the fight for democracy. But later on, there would have been a Battle of Lewis if the royalist forces, which were holed up in Arundel, had managed to fight their way through Haywards Heath and got to Lewis, which in those days was the most important town and was the centre of republicanism, of Cromwellianism, through the Newtons, who owned and lived in the Grange, which is still extant and which still has some part of their grounds as a beautiful garden and park. So we've got quite a relationship with Arundel Castle. But anyway, the break-in 2 or 3 days ago is now believed to be an inside job. So if you work at the castle and the coppers come around asking questions, make sure that you're squeaky clean. Because even if you've lifted a pickle fork, hey, you'll be in trouble. Right, let's... since we're talking old times, let's listen to Eva Sejam for a moment with Flawless Mind, because whenever we do a program on the Priory here, we use this record. It's very haunting, very beautiful. She's a lady from Armenia. I've never actually met Yeva myself, but I do know her sister extremely well, who's also an extraordinarily talented lady, and a very sprightly lady, because she realizes that her name is almost unpronounceable in the West. So she redubbed herself Star Jackson, and good for her. Here we go.
He never bring you down and leave you alone. Trust him all in now, 'cause he is alive. He leads your way through darkest of times. He never lets you go. And he'll be there for you. And he'll be there for you. He'll never bring you down and leave you alone.
and Yerevan is from Yerevan, which is the capital city of Armenia. If we're talking about places to go, if you've never been to Armenia, it's a small country, but it's very interesting. Their tourism ministers once heard say, "Oh, we've got here to show our churches." Well, yes, but they're very historic, a lot of them. They are built into rock because they were always the front line against the Islamic, let's not sound too biased, Islamic hordes. So they would withdraw into these churches and cathedrals in the rocks, built into the rocks, and beautifully built, to defend themselves until such time as they could actually get back onto the ascendant and get their country back. And it's a lovely little country, and the people are quite delightful. We set out to go to a small town in, I always use the word interior of any place because I lived in British Columbia where the interior was the interior. It was miles and miles from the sea, but we're from the Turkish border. And we stopped at what would best be called a transport cafe, which was just a black tent with a little old lady sitting there. And she insisted, she dusted down the seats and so on. She insisted that I particularly, because I was the guest, should sit there. And we were given fruit and cheese and so on and so forth. And I said to my colleague after we left and had a very nice breakfast, I may say, I said, "Well, how much did that cost?" And she said she wouldn't take any money for it. We were her honoured guests, and we sat and had this, and that must have been half weekly rations. I felt very badly about it. We were on the way, but nonetheless, I also felt really proud that people with that sort of tradition still exist. She didn't mind giving out her stuff. It's 7:57, and I've got to go, and I've forgotten why. Oh yes, go to Armenia. That's right, because Yerevan. But also, it was the first state to embrace Christianity as a state religion, and it has a sort of center for religious affairs. There's a bit like the Vatican, a very small version of the Vatican for its own church. And I saw some wonderful things, old ladies making bread, and they stick their hands into a sort of a tube with golden ashes bursting forth, and their arms, one mistake and their arms could be burned off. It's fascinating to watch, and it's 7:57, and I've got to go. Okay, I'm delighted to have been with you for this first half hour. It gets me going. I hope it gets you going. I'll be back in 4 or 5 minutes with our television. So here we are, Ben Sound, Endless Motion.